The National Investor's motto is, you can get information anywhere, but here you get knowledge. And for well over 40 years now, Chris Temple has imparted that knowledge, an unparalleled, understandable, and useful take on the big picture of the markets and of our world. He has been out in front of what you see on the news every day on many themes. More, Chris has taken this macro knowledge and his unique analytical abilities to uncover unique investment opportunities. Often he has guided his members to big winners in resources, biotech stocks, and more. His talents and connections often getting him into ground floor opportunities before they are discovered. Without further ado, here is Chris with today's topic.
Welcome once more. We're cranking them out fast and furious as we hit the midway point of 2025. Now we're starting on the downhill side. And another company to bring you today is one of my more successful ones in the last few years, now that we've had a good recovery in uranium and nuclear energy, and that is Energy Fuels. Energy Fuels is listed on the New York Stock Exchange's Amex arm under the symbol UUUU, very appropriate. And if you want a primary listing in Toronto, it is EFR. In just a minute, the company's Senior Vice President, Curtis Moore, who I've known for a lot of years, is going to be joining me once more to give you an updated look at the company, all the different moving parts, which of course these days increasingly is not just as a uranium producer, but also as America's only conventional mill holding company that can produce rare earth element products. And that's a big story as well right now. In fact, I think if you had to look at the two top stories right now in natural resources, especially when it hits national security and that type of thing, they're uranium for nuclear energy and rare earth elements, which of course we know that China has embargoed for a while now, and that's part of the ongoing trade friction, specifically between the US and China, but even between China and the EU, for example, where a lot of automakers are saying that, hey, we're going to have to start shutting in production because we can't get the finished rare earth element products that we need for the automotive industry. So it's a very, very big deal. And Energy Fuels, and a lot of people don't really get this yet, and we're going to try and help you with that today, is really making its case for being the most important U.S. company when it comes to rare earths as well. Now, before I bring Curtis on, the usual preliminaries first, he or myself may be making what can be construed as forward-looking statements. We want you to be aware of that. Secondly, Energy Fuels has been one of my recommended companies at the National Investor for quite a while. They don't pay for that. I recommend companies based on their stories and on their merits, but as others do, from time to time, Energy Fuels will also engage National Investor Publishing to do some follow-on media work and things like that, of which this video is a part. Now, rather than me rambling on about the different aspects of the companies, I want to get to Curtis. We've got a lot to talk about. A lot of things have happened just in 2025 to bring you up to date on. The best introduction I can possibly give to him is one that the company has on its website already. If you've not seen it before, I want to play it here because it's a great overview of this very pivotal and very important U.S. company, important to our national security, important to these various industries as well. So I'm going to play that for you now, and then we'll go right into Curtis.
Energy is such an important part of our everyday lives. Without access to clean, affordable electricity and energy, you can't have the modern society that we have today. From electric vehicles to renewable energy to advanced computers, those technologies require the raw materials that we produce here at Energy Fuels.
Energy drives just about everything. When you look at the various sources of energy, you really have to come up with the mix that fits the location. And nuclear is about 20% of the power grid in the United States. The key with nuclear power right now is this focus on reducing carbon emission.
It's going to play a major role in solving the climate change problem. It's our largest source of carbon-free, emission-free electricity. It's also particularly important because it's baseload. It provides electricity 24/7, 365, no matter what the weather is doing and no matter what the sun is doing.
There were natural formations of uranium all over the Four Corners region. And when the U.S. government decided they needed uranium, well, that's where the prospectors went. And that was really the beginning of the nuclear age for the nuclear fuel cycle.
The uranium industry has really evolved over the last 50, 60, 70 years. In the early days, it was essentially a government-sponsored defense program. It was very lightly regulated. We didn't have a great understanding of a lot of the health impacts, the environmental impacts that could come from uranium mining. But a lot has changed over the last 70 years. Today's industry is extremely responsible. We've got a great record of environmental protection, regulatory compliance, worker safety. That's probably the biggest misconception that people have. People think things haven't changed in the last 70 years. Well, I'm here to tell you they have.
Our company has the ability to do more than any other company I know to decarbonize and improve electrification.
Nuclear is seeing a real renaissance within the United States. We're moving into advanced reactor technologies and small modular reactors, and all of those are going to need uranium for their fuel. Energy Fuels produces the raw materials that make many clean energy technologies possible. Uranium is the fuel for clean nuclear energy. Rare earth elements are the building blocks for a lot of clean energy technologies like electric vehicles, wind energy, batteries. We also produce vanadium, which is primarily used in steel, but it's also seeing a lot of interest in high-capacity grid-scale battery technologies. So Energy Fuels has an extremely unique role to play in this clean energy transition that we're in the midst of today. The Pinyon Plain Mine was discovered in the 1970s. It's a really good uranium deposit.
We have over 2 million pounds of uranium within the Pinyon Plain Mine ore body. That uranium is enough to power the entire state of Arizona for over a year, purely on carbon-free green energy.
It has the equivalent amount of energy as would be contained in a train that had coal that stretched from Los Angeles all the way to New York and part of the way back again. The amount of electricity contained on this small 14-acre site of land is quite extraordinary.
You're not going to have a green world without mining.
The home you live in, the wallboards, the roads that you just drove on, every time you see a cement truck drive by, this is all product of mining.
Everything you see around you, all of that was either mined or it was grown. So there is no getting around the need for mining. It can be done certainly in much more responsible and much cleaner ways than has been done in the past, and we are constantly working to make that happen.
I take the responsibility to the land and the people very seriously. We do things right. We do things at high standards.
The life cycle of a uranium mine is that the deposit is discovered, then you have to go through and you have to permit that deposit for production. And that is a lengthy, multi-year process through a whole host of federal and state agencies. Once it's in production, you mine until the deposit is depleted. And then once you're done mining, then you go into reclamation. And this is one of the huge differences between how mining is done today versus how it was done in the past. We have to go through and ensure that there's nothing left on the surface that would indicate that a mine operated there. You have to recontour the land and you have to revegetate it, and then you have a lot of post-mining monitoring that has to happen to ensure that there's not something that pops up down the road.
Once post-closure period is complete, we'll be able to return this land back to its former use, and the public would be able to enjoy and recreate here and not know that this land was ever even operating as a mine.
The White Mesa Mill is what's known as a conventional uranium mill. This is where ore from mines or other sources was processed and where the uranium is extracted and the impurities removed. We're also applying those same technologies and those same practices to the extraction of rare earth elements. There are rare earth element bearing ores that are mined around the world, and nearly all of them are mildly radioactive because they contain small quantities of uranium and thorium and other radionuclides. And those have to be removed from that ore before those rare earths can be sent on for further processing. And so that's why the White Mesa Mill is such an important piece of the rare earth supply chain here in the United States. There is truly no other facility anywhere in North America like the White Mesa Mill with the capabilities, the licenses, and the expertise that we have at that facility.
I've worked here for 10 years, and I stayed here that long because I love the area, and it's about the best job in the area.
I grew up on the reservation, and then I moved up here to Blanding. So there's a lot of people in our county that have worked here. That means a lot to our county.
For me, it's pretty much home. Most of the guys that I work here is like family to me.
We have a team of people down at the White Mesa Mill that I just cannot speak more highly of. They are professional, they are knowledgeable, they are committed to safety and environmental protection. It's a great team that we have both at the mill and also throughout the entire company.
We try to do things right, not only environmentally, but also safety-wise. The last thing anybody wants to do is get hurt and not go home.
We take great pride in ensuring that everything that comes to the mill stays at the mill, and everything that leaves is something that we allow to leave. We monitor our tailing on a daily basis to make sure that we are taking care of the environment and the people who live here.
Our company is made up of a lot of people, and I want them to feel that they're part of something that is extraordinary. Uranium's been around for a while, and that's what we've done for a long time. But when you look at like the rare earth elements for the high efficiency electric motors, like neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, terbium, those are elements that assist in making the most powerful magnets that use the least amount of energy to propel things. That's the new part of this space, and this is the exciting part of it.
Energy Fuels is focused on a particular mineral called monazite, and monazite is extremely important when it comes to rare earth element production because it's very high in the particular rare earths you need for electric vehicles and wind energy in particular. But the problem for most companies is that monazite is mildly radioactive. You need special licenses, you need special capabilities and special expertise in order to process the monazite, extract the uranium and other radionuclides, and also extract the rare earth elements and send those down for further processing on the rare earth supply chain. And the White Mesa Mill in Utah is the only facility in the United States capable of performing that role.
The newest thing on the table for our company is looking at these isotopes that are now the focus of some modern cancer treatments. When you look at these new technologies that are in for approval by the FDA, they're more powerful, they're more selective, they do less damage.
This industry is fascinating. There is never a dull moment. The challenges are constant, but they're exciting, and it's exciting to try to overcome some of those challenges.
Right now we rely on international sources for the uranium, and we hope to be a major supplier of domestically produced uranium.
We're trying to restore that processing technology and the ability to produce these advanced rare earth materials here in the United States.
Our goal is to reshore these critical elements in the United States of America, reduce dependence on Russia and China, and at the same time do this responsibly at the highest standards possible. We want to do extraordinary things.
And here is my old friend Curtis Moore, the Senior Vice President of Energy Fuels. Curtis, nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Well, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in person shortly. You and I will both be at the Wyoming section of the SME next month, the latter part of August. We'll have a big uranium and nuclear energy conference out in Wyoming. I'm looking forward to speaking at that and seeing you. You know, and look, you and I first met years ago when Energy Fuels was one of the many down-in-the-mouth uranium stories through the lean years of a bear market. Now everybody is feeling a whole lot better about life in the last few years. And it's only getting better from there. I mean, you guys are doing very, very well right now. You're the biggest producer of uranium now in the U.S. coming out of the gate. You'll be joined by a few others, of course, but you've got first mover advantage somewhat where that's concerned. But the other part of the story, which you didn't have when you and I first met, and I want to unpackage this a little bit today, especially for new people, is that you've now become a pretty major player in rare earth elements, the processing, some of the raw materials and so forth. And that is, again, as I said before you came on, especially important because that's another big story that's been in the news recently about how vulnerable companies are in the US, in the EU, and elsewhere from the various embargoes now that China has put on exports of finished rare earth products, magnets, things needed for everything from defense to automotives, whatnot. We are learning again just how vulnerable we are, and I'm excited about what you guys are doing, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But first of all, before we get into where you're at right now with your uranium production and growth plans and so forth, I want to get your take on this. Of all of the executive orders that President Trump has signed since he came back into office in January, I think the ones that are the most actionable economically, that don't require a lot of other additional help because the market has come around, is the subject of uranium and nuclear energy. How do you see these executive orders, and comment however you like, Curtis, but how do you see them specifically impacting what you're doing at Energy Fuels?
Sure. No, happy to provide my perspectives there. I mean, in short, we're seeing a great deal of love out of the Trump administration for all aspects of our business, whether it's uranium, or rare earths, or other critical minerals. Energy Fuels, I think, really is at the forefront of all those important issues as the largest domestic producer of uranium and a very quickly emerging producer of rare earth elements centered around our facility in Utah, which is the White Mesa Mill, which we'll be talking about here today. So yeah, the executive orders are saying all the right things. We know that agencies throughout the government are furiously working to see how to implement those executive orders as we speak. I don't know any of the details about any of that, but the impression I get is that the administration is going to do something big. It's probably happening soon. And I would be shocked if Energy Fuels wasn't a big part of that. We've been in DC quite a bit this year, talking about all of our capabilities on uranium and rare earth elements, particularly. You can see that folks in the administration, whether it's in Department of Defense or Department of Commerce or Department of Energy or even the White House, they get it. They understand what we're doing. They can see why it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we'll see what comes next. No guarantees in life, but I think we're in a good position to benefit.
Well, and one of the things that I've been saying in my own coverage and other interviews I've done is that unlike some of the other minerals and metals that we need to start mining again in the U.S., the economics underpinning uranium and nuclear energy are significantly better. I mean, I hate to say it for all my friends that have got really great development stage nickel projects, for example, there's not a one of them in the U.S. or Canada that's economic at today's nickel price. Copper, even after its jump on more tariff threats / news this week, there's a lot of copper projects out there that are still going to need a better long-term price to be viable. But uranium is a little bit of a different animal. Plus, it's got much broader based support with both political parties and whatnot. Do you see Energy Fuels anytime in the near future selling anything to the government itself? Because I know that the official strategic stockpile for the military of uranium for aircraft carriers, for subs and things like that, that's starting to get pretty low. And plus, there's still this standing strategic reserve for other purposes that was funded, I think, just one time since it was created during Trump 1.0. What do you see coming from those things?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there was a recent Section 232 on critical minerals that the Trump administration initiated a few months ago. Energy Fuels and others in the industry, of course, submitted our comments to that. I'd say that the substance of Energy Fuels comments was really just to restart that U.S. uranium reserve. Look, we think that the Trump administration generally got it right the first time around. If you recall back, kind of when I maybe first started talking to you, Energy Fuels and another company, UR Energy, we started our own Section 232 during the first Trump administration, which was actually a pretty successful initiative. We were really, I think, at the forefront at that time of just warning the U.S. government and making them aware of just how dramatically over-dependent we had become on Russia for our uranium supply. And then, of course, that came to fruition when Russia invaded Ukraine and realized, look, when you start doing deals with dictators, who knows what's going to come about as a result of that. And so So that's kind of what we're looking for. But again, even just normal commercial markets for uranium are much, much better today than they were even just a few years ago. Last year, the price of uranium did spike up over about $100 per pound on the spot market. It settled back a little bit, and right now it's in the kind of mid 70s per pound, which is certainly a lot better than it was when we initiated that first Section 232,
Sure.
when it was, I don't know, 20, $25, $30 per pound or something below everybody's cost of production. And where it sits right now, you can get some of your lower cost production online right now, which of course we're doing. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that later here. Prices still need to be much higher, we believe, because all this new energy demand coming down the pipe, and you hear it all the time, whether it's AI or data centers or electrification and all this stuff, it's going to take a whole lot of electricity and a whole lot of energy. And there are and again, as you say, there's bipartisan support for nuclear energy and expanding nuclear, both in the United States and elsewhere. That's going to take a lot of uranium, and nobody knows where the heck all that uranium is going to come from. Certainly not at $80 per pound. I think it needs to be far higher than that. So yeah, no, the future is extremely bright for us in the uranium side, and so we're establishing our market share and getting going, and hope to be the largest
Well,
producer
as
for
you
many years.
probably saw recently, I did another broad sector update for the industry with our mutual friend Scott Melby, and he was even more bullish than I was, and maybe you. And one of the things he pointed out is that when you look at all these projections, we've all seen the charts. I'll put another one of them up here right now about this yawning supply shortage going forward based on the expected increased demand for all the reactors being built in the world, all the countries coming back online, etc. A lot of it is probably understated because most of these statistics don't factor in the likely demand once small modular reactors start becoming a part of this equation in the early 2030s or so time frame in a bigger way. And that's going to be something that's revolutionary. And the cool thing about the uranium price, if you're a uranium producer like you guys, the uranium price, and I believe this with all my heart, we'll go to $200 a pound on the spot market and even higher. But that doesn't necessarily mean that nuclear energy is uneconomic, because when you look at the cost of the uranium fuel itself as a part of all of the costs of a plant, it's not that big. It's 12, 14%. It's not 60 or 70 or 80 like a coal or gas fired power plant. So, the market's going to reward you guys that have been sitting on all of this bottled up production capacity, and all of a sudden it's needed and a whole lot more. So it's great. You mentioned costs and so forth, and an aberration in the United States of America, even when you look at all of the stuff that's getting ready to come back online, including a couple of your other projects. But when you look at your Pinyon Plain Mine in Arizona and the grades that have got there, I mean, there's hardly anything like this in the world. I mean, some of these grades rival the best of the Athabasca up in Canada.
No, that's absolutely right. Our Pinyon Plain Mine is turning out to be a gem. And I think it's one of the bright spots in the industry right now, as particularly some of the smaller junior miners are ramping up. Look, you're going to have hiccups. I mean, mining uranium is difficult, and it doesn't just come out of the ground, and it doesn't just appear in a nuclear reactor. And so, yeah, no, we're a big part of the ramp up in the U.S., but I think that the Pinyon Plain Mine is probably going to be the largest producer of uranium in the United States for the next several years. And again, it is not only is it meeting expectations, but it is significantly exceeding our even already high expectations. We have not put out a new resource report on Pinyon Plain yet, but we have released some of our exploration and drilling results, along with production. So we're producing uranium right now out of that mine at a very high rate. You may have seen that last quarter we pulled uranium out of the ground. It was roughly, I think it was about 640,000 pounds that we mined at Pinyon Plain just last quarter. And the reason that those pounds are so high is that we're mining much higher grades than we expected. Our resource report, I believe, had grades kind of in that main zone that we're mining right now. And again, Pinyon Plain has both an upper, a middle, and a lower zone, and we're mining out the main zone right now. And in our resource report, I believe we had estimated average grades of about 0.9%, but we're mining well in excess of 2 to 2.5%. And so everything is reconciling extremely positively out there right now. That's going to result in more pounds, even lower costs. It was already going to be a low cost mine, before all this, probably $35-40 per pound. It's probably going to be low 30s per pound, and that's an all-in cost. Taxes, royalties, reclamation, operating costs, transportation, capex, everything. And so, yeah, it's just going to be a really nice, attractive mine. Now, the problem with these mines is that they're kind of confined and they're relatively small. But hopefully it'll be mining, we'll be mining 1.5 million, 2 million pounds per year out of that mine for the next, I don't know, let's say 5 to 8 years. And so, at strong margins, that's a nice little baseline to work from.
And you're doing more drilling too, though, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're doing more drilling in the upper zone, the lower zone. We think we're going to start finding maybe some more connections between those zones in this mine. Our CEO, Mark Chalmers, he started off actually as an underground uranium miner in the United States, and so he's got some unique experience in the industry. He mined some of these breccia pipes back in the 80s, early in his career. And in his estimation, this is going to be the best breccia pipe in northern Arizona to be mined in U.S. history. It's probably going to be the highest grade mine in U.S. history. So we'll see. We're extremely excited about that. Now, we have several other mines in our portfolio, but I would say it's really an outlier on the positive side here in the United States today.
Yeah. Now, as far as the other mines, take a real quick lap around them. I know you've got some small production starting elsewhere right now.
Yep, yeah, we do. Yeah, so we have some of our other conventional assets, like our La Salle complex, just a little bit north of our White Mesa Mill in Utah, which we're mining at. And in some respects, we're using that almost as a kind of a training ground for miners. And again, you've probably heard this from other U.S. miners out there, is that we kind of lost a generation of miners in the U.S. when uranium prices were, pretty low for the last 30 years, right? And so you have some more seasoned miners out there, but they're in their 50s, 60s, right? And they still like to do it, and they're still very good at it. But you don't have kind of that middle zone right there, and so we're trying to train up some younger miners, get them trained up on how to do it properly, efficiently, safely, of course. And so we're kind of doing some of that at La Salle. We are buying ore today from Western Uranium. That's another uranium miner in the region. They have their Sunday complex just across the border in Colorado. We're happy to get that. Plus, we also produce, and this has really kind of been our bread and butter to keep our lights on over the last several years, is alternate feed materials, essentially recycling uranium-bearing waste materials, for lack of a better term, which is a really nice, super low-cost way to produce uranium. Honestly, most of it is single digits per pound uranium. Unfortunately, there's only about 50 to maybe 200,000 pounds per year of that stuff. I wish there was millions of pounds of it because we'd be really rocking and rolling. But hey, we're happy to blend that nice low-cost production into our overall portfolio.
Well, and speaking of that subject, and it's a good segue into this, an important event happened for you guys earlier this year. And that was when, at long last, very, very long last, you had a deal struck with the Navajo Nation to be able to transport material across their territory to the White Mesa Mill. Part of that, and you'll have to fill me in on, remind me the details, Curtis, but part of that involves some old dump material and stuff that you're going to be able to clean up in the Navajo Nation. That makes them happy. It's kind of a win-win for everybody. Even though you may not make a whole lot on it, it does engender more goodwill. We'll see what happens, but give us a quick lap around that event.
Yeah. So, so for those that don't know, there is kind of a long, sort of sad history with uranium mining on the Navajo Nation. If you go back to the 1940s, the 1950s, 1960s, that was kind of the middle of the Cold War, with the Soviet Union. There was an arms race going on. The U.S. government needed uranium for weapons. And so the U.S. government was buying uranium from pretty much anybody with a Geiger counter and a pickup truck to go out and sell them uranium ore so they could make weapons out of it. There were really, number one, there were really no environmental protections or health protections at that time. I don't think that was intentional. I just don't think that maybe folks understood maybe some of the risks of uranium mining, which there are risks and they're very real, but they're honestly very relatively simple to manage at the end of the day, but they just didn't know at that time. But at the end of the day, there were several hundred old uranium mines that operated in the Navajo Nation that never really got cleaned up. And a lot of miners got sick. They died for just because underground conditions were not safe. Groundwater got contaminated. So there's a real bad taste in the mouth of many Navajo people toward uranium mining. And so when we started transporting ore from Pinyon Plain to the White Mesa Mill, now keep in mind we were using federal interstates and highways. We had every right to truck that ore. But the Navajo leadership stepped up and said that they didn't like it, or at least they wanted to bring us to the table. Honestly, we could have told them no, but really just in an effort to try to build some goodwill and maybe some future opportunities for the company, we decided to stop transport, sit down with them, and listen to them, listen to their concerns, and listen to their solutions. Some of their solutions were not reasonable at the time, but we were able to address their concerns through other methods. And so at the end of the day, we struck an agreement. And I would say we've got a pretty great relationship now with Navajo leadership for sure. I think they now see us as being one of their solutions to cleaning up those old mines. A lot of that stuff is just uranium bearing, mine waste is what it is. And so all you got to do is scoop it up, put it in a truck, take it to the White Mesa Mill. We can extract the uranium out of it, and you clean up the site. It's relatively simple, honestly. And there's billions of dollars actually earmarked in the U.S. government to clean up these sites. And so while we're willing to do some of this work for free, again, to build up that goodwill, this actually is a big opportunity potentially for Energy Fuels to get involved in government cleanup work, which would, again, just be a real nice baseline source of revenue and cash flow for us. So it worked out really, really well. And honestly, it's been one of the prouder achievements in my career, to tell you the truth.
Well, for sure. And I know that was a long time coming, and it was kind of hanging over everybody's head for a while. And it's great that that's in the rearview mirror. Before we get on to the rare earths part of things, you talk about cash flow. You mined 600 and some thousand pounds of uranium in Q2, like you said, well beyond what you'd originally guided for the year initially, and as far as the run rate for the year, and that was because of the higher grades and so forth. Nice problem to have that you underestimated how much uranium is there.
Usual.
Yeah. But tell us about the contracting and is the sales side of things. How are you seeing that develop and so forth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do have an existing portfolio of long-term contracts. We did guide that we are going to sell 140,000 pounds of U3O8 here in Q3 and another 160,000 pounds in Q4. We also guided that we're going to have, I believe it's 660 to 880,000 pounds of sales in 2026. Now that's under our existing portfolio. And again, these contracts go out to 2028 and 2030. But because of all this uranium we're finding in Pinyon Plain, we have more to sell. And so we will make kind of selective spot sales from time to time into a little bit of market strength, but we'd prefer to put most of our material into long-term contracts. So we are now in a position to, now that we have a very high degree of confidence that we'll get additional uranium out of the ground at attractive pricing to be able to sign long-term contracts. So I think you might see us sign some more contracts here. And again, we don't want to contract all our material because we, like you, think that uranium prices are going up. But if they do go up to $100, $150, $200 a pound, well, shoot, we got a whole pile more, projects we can put into play that, that will also, spin off nice cash flows. Maybe not quite as nice as if we put it all from Pinyon Plain, but shoot, why wait for that when you can get nice cash flow today?
For sure. So White Mesa, you've mentioned it a couple of times. It's the only conventional mill in the United States of America that can process the kind of conventional ores that you have at Pinyon Plain and a couple other places. That's as opposed to, for people who know a little bit about the industry, ISR mining, which is less equipment intensive. It's basically in situ recovery where you put a well in the ground, you just put a solution in, you're able to liberate the uranium and bring it up. That's a good business as well if you've got good enough grades for that. But the other unique thing though about White Mesa is that it also has the ability, and you processed some of this stuff last year for a stretch when you had it running. You can also process rare earth element containing materials, and that's a part of the business that I think there's been some confusion, I think, in the markets, as far as Energy Fuels is concerned. Okay, now you're not a pure play uranium company, now you're into rare earths, and does this dilute the attention? Is this going to be accretive? How does it all work? And I know you and I have talked about it enough to where I'm excited as hell about what you're doing. because as I said early on, it's another area that's right in our face in the news right now that we're extremely vulnerable as a country and not being able to do enough of this and come up with these things. And so, when people hear the term rare earth elements, I mean, I can go out my backyard here in Florida, kick around some sand, and there's technically some rare earth elements in that sand. It's everywhere. But the trick is it the right kind? Is it got the right stuff in it in high enough quantities? And can you marshal those substances, all of these things? I can't pronounce half the words. Can you marshal all of these things and make, magnets and guidance systems and parts for computers and things like that? So give us a little bit of a tutorial, if you would, Curtis, on, the raw material that's needed, which you already get some of it at White Mesa from Chemours. For example, you signed a deal with them again early this year. You've got other things in play, and then we're going to get into your own efforts in the recent past to have your own feedstock in a few choice places.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the heart of everything you're talking about here is our White Mesa mill in southeast Utah, about I don't know, about an hour and a half south of Moab, if you've ever been out there. So the White Mesa Mill is the only operating or operational conventional uranium mill in the United States. As you said, there's two ways to produce uranium. You have conventional methods and you have in situ recovery methods. We have both in our portfolio. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, and they both have their own cost structures. Sometimes ISR is lower cost, sometimes conventional is lower cost, actually, because our Pinyon Plain Mine is conventional mining, and it's far lower cost than ISR, at least in the United States. And there's a couple of other conventional uranium mills that exist in the United States. I think they're licensed, but they need a little bit of work to be able to get up and running. And again, with prices and markets going where they are, we hope they get up and running because the U.S. is going to need that material. But right now, White Mesa is the here and now. And so it turned out so we started looking at rare earths about 6 years ago or so. Price of uranium was still, kind of, I don't know, languishing in the 30s or something like that. It was hard for us to make a margin down there. So we started looking at other sort of complementary commodities where we could use this capacity. Keeping in mind, the White Mesa Mill is a huge facility. It's big, right? It's never operated at full capacity, even for uranium, even during good markets. And so we started looking at other commodities, and it turned out that rare earths kind of rose to the top. Because every single major rare earth bearing mineral, when you dig it up out of the ground, has uranium and thorium in it. It's naturally radioactive. So you need a special facility with special licenses, special capabilities to be able to process that material. And so it turned out that a lot of the same mineral processing techniques that we have used for uranium and vanadium at the White Mesa Mill for decades was directly, applicable to rare earth elements. And so we started testing it, lab scale, pilot scale, and we decided to put in some commercial scale capacity last year, and it worked perfectly. And so it was just a natural for us to go into rare earths. It's not diverting any attention away from our uranium production, as hopefully people can see through our Pinyon Plain and LaSalle and ongoing production right now. It's really just complementary and utilizing some excess capacity at the mill. Now, as it turns out, we have the ability to produce a lot more rare earths, and actually we think at low costs that's competitive with China as a result of these plans that we have put together. So we're looking to expand our capacity at the White Mesa Mill, install parallel capacity. Right now we have to choose uranium or rare earths. We can't do both at the same time. But and right now, of course, uranium markets are far better for us than rare earths. But in the next couple of years, we hope to install that parallel capacity. And so at that point, we'll still be the leading U.S. producer of uranium, we think. We'll be a leading low-cost global producer of rare earths. And then our feedstock for rare earths is this mineral called monazite, which has great distributions of the light, the middle, and the heavy rare earths. You said earlier that rare earths, not only are they not rare in the Earth's crust, they're actually mined already all over the world at other mines. And a big source of those rare earths are heavy mineral sand mines, where they produce this monazite concentrate as a low-cost byproduct that currently all goes to China. Well, we can do the same thing there. And so, again, we'll also be a low-cost global producer of heavy mineral sands, which is mainly titanium mines. So
this stuff, Curtis, is basically a byproduct of mining for what other things?
Titanium.
Okay, so
titanium primarily.
Yep. All right. Because I'm following a couple of stories, for example, in titanium, as you know, and when they get all done getting the titanium out of the material, rather than throwing it away, that's the stuff that you can extract. And you've explained this to me before, and I think it's kind of cool to help people understand about why you're in this game with the rare earth elements. Something I never understood until you explain it to me is that you do have some radioactive elements. And again, radioactive elements also are very, very common in the Earth's crust. It's everywhere. I remember watching a video of a guy years ago who literally, I don't know what the hell he was eating. It was kind of weird. He takes a spoonful of something after putting a Geiger counter on it, and he's eating this stuff. And
it literally might have been a banana. Bananas are radioactive. I mean, potassium is radioactive.
That's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's good that you can do this because we're in a mess, like what we alluded to a minute ago, where China's concerned. And I know you guys announced earlier in the year to get people to try and get their head around this part of Energy Fuel's story of the 7 rare earth oxides that China right now has embargoes on in various ways. You guys can produce 6 of them.
Yes, exactly. So in early April, China put export controls on 7 of the dual-use rare earth elements. Okay, and so by dual use, they mean these are elements that can be used for both commercial and military and defense requirements. So that includes samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, yttrium, and scandium. Okay, so we can produce all of those except scandium, only because scandium doesn't really occur in our monazite feedstock. But it does. All the rest of those do occur in our feedstock, and those are just extremely important for military and defense requirements for the U.S. military. And so we were just kind of announcing to the world, including the military, that hey, if you need some lutetium oxide, we can produce it for you. Now, the problem with a lot of those heavy rare earths that are now terbium and dysprosium, those are kind of a different story. There are good and growing commercial markets for those, again, in vehicles and robots and other applications. But the others, samarium and gadolinium and things like that, there's not much of a commercial market for those. So if the U.S. government wants us to produce those, they'll have to properly incentivize us to do it. But we can absolutely do it. And the great thing as well is that unlike some other well-known rare earth names out there, those guys don't actually have those heavy rare earths in their feedstock in any substantial quantities. And so that again is just, look, if they want that, we have in our feedstock, we have the technical ability to do it, we can produce it for you if you need it. And so again, I think that folks in the U.S. government up to the highest levels know exactly who Energy Fuels is and our capabilities. So we'll see what comes of that.
So nobody, that's what was going to be my next question is that, a lot of companies have put in applications of various kinds to try and get either DPA, Defense Production Act money or something from the government. They certainly do have to know that you're unique in this area to replace some of what we're not going to have from China, probably going forward at all. When all is said and done. So you guys have any opportunities in the works for any federal grants or loans?
I won't go into too much about that, other than to say that, yes, people from the White House to DOD to DOE to Commerce to Treasury, they know who Energy Fuels is.
They have your phone number.
They have our phone number. Yeah, exactly. Well, and you made a point just a minute ago, that we can't expect to get those materials from China long term. Look, things kind of thaw and then they freeze, but the problem, if you're the United States, though, as we are, you don't want that sort of guillotine hanging over you every time you get into a dispute with China, right? And so you just want to take that sort of economic weapon away from them, and it's not that hard and it's not that expensive to do at the end of the day. I mean, we could basically solve America's rare earth problems for a couple of $1 billion. Energy Fuels could. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's not that much. Now, one of the challenges that the U.S. government faces, and I think it's a challenge they need to kind of get over, frankly, is that U.S. military and defense requirements for rare earths is only about 1 or 2% of total commercial demand. And so a lot of their thoughts are that, like, why are we going to go solve America's rare earth problems when, say, we only need a couple $100,000 worth of samarium oxide in today's market, right? Well, look, sure, if on commercial markets, samarium oxide's only $2 a kilogram, but if you want to make a nuclear submarine or you need an actuator for a F-35 jet engine or something like that, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and so, and I think they're starting to get that. Now, look, we're not looking for the U.S. military to underpin the entire industry, but
Right.
But again, if particularly they want some of these heavy rare earths, they're going to have to step up and incentivize it. Otherwise, there's no commercial reason for anybody to do it other than China.
Right. Well, and again, getting to where the bottleneck is, so to speak, for this, it's all been in the processing. China has pretty much had the market cornered for globally for most of these things for quite a while, because just like everything else, it wasn't just sneakers and t-shirts and Christmas toys and other doodads that we outsourced to China. It was this kind of thing too. And now we're starting to realize, oh crap, look at what we did and figure out how to get it back. So I want to move on, from the processing, Curtis. You guys have inked a few different deals in the recent past to get some of your own very, in these cases, much greater than average feedstock, and from Australia to Madagascar to Brazil.
But yeah, so just a little history. So again, when we realized that we had this capacity to process rare earths. And again, that's the big bottleneck, by the way, is processing rare earths. Mining the rare earths is the easy part. Okay. Yep. Now it's not easy, but it's easier, relatively speaking. And so when we figured we had this ability to process monazite sand byproduct from heavy mineral sands, well, shoot, we figured that if a company had a choice between selling it to a Chinese entity or selling it to a U.S. entity, well, they'd sell it to us all day long. Well, all of a sudden, the price that Chinese companies were willing to pay for these monazite tailings went up by about 10 or 20x. So just to make sure those molecules continue to flow into their industry. So at that point, we realized we need to control our own supply of feedstock. We need to have our own secure supply of monazite feedstock. And so, so that's when we made the strategic decision to start acquiring heavy mineral sand assets.
And let me stop you there for a second. I want to make sure that we drive this point home. So when China, in many respects, is selling surplus production of all manner of things for whatever they can give it away for globally, and that's what's caused a lot of the trade imbalances and the trade friction, is that a lot of stuff, because they're in full-blown deflation in their economy right now, and trying to figure out how to keep everything afloat. You keep everything afloat by all of this surplus production you've got of everything. You sell it for whatever you can get, and that's what's been hurting everybody else. But in this particular case, when they saw that there was a chance that the stranglehold that they have over finished rare earth products might go away, they were willing to pay up that much more for monazite concentrates.
Well, yes, they were, because keep in mind, they were the only buyer in town at that time.
Right.
And for heavy mineral sand operators, monazite was a radioactive waste for them. They had to get rid of it.
Right.
Okay. So again, Chinese companies, being ahead of the game like they often are sometimes, they went to these heavy mineral sand miners and said, hey, that liability that you got to figure out how to deal with it. Well, we'll buy that from you. And so they were able to get it for very cheap, far lower than it was actually worth, from these heavy mineral sand miners. And heavy mineral sand miners are kind of like, great, all right, sure, we'll package it up and send it to you, and problem solved, right? And by the way, we just made a little money off of it. Well, now there was competition. Now Chinese companies, let's say, were forced to, maybe pay up for a fairer price. But keep in mind as well that monazite tailings from heavy mineral sand mines, again, titanium mines, and by the way, just to be clear, titanium is not a rare earth. That's just another metal but this rare earths also comes off of titanium mines. Probably supports, we estimate, about 15% of China's rare earth industry. So 15% of their feedstock comes from monazite tailings from heavy mineral sand mines around the world. And so that's a big chunk of their industry. So they need, and where they really make money and where they really dominate is in the downstream, the metals, the alloys, the magnets, the EV motors, all the downstream stuff. So yes, it didn't actually hurt their economics all that much to pay up for it, but it took all the economic incentive away from us to do it. So, and honestly, if any manufacturer can control the mines, if they want to go that far downstream, you can really control your costs. rather than have different people take margins along the way and have your costs go up along the way. So, and that's one of the big advantages China has in rare earths is that they're vertically integrated. You know, they go from mines all the way to EV motors, right? And it's not like some company taking a margin all along the way, which makes it rapidly uneconomic, which is one of the things that Energy Fuels is trying to do is vertically integrate so we can grab market share, we can be cost competitive, and be a good alternative to Chinese suppliers.
So give us the quick Cliff Notes reasons of why Madagascar, why Brazil, why Australia with these acquisitions that you made.
Yeah. So when we realized we needed to acquire these mines, we went to a leading, actually based in Australia, a leading consultant and economic forecaster on heavy mineral sands, mainly titanium and zircon mines. And we asked him to give us a list, canvass the world, go at every deposit you're aware of, and kind of rank all these deposits kind of in order as to what you think are the best ones. The one is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, far and away the best, is Toliara, our project in Madagascar. A very, very well-known deposit. It's a monster. It has got decades, if not centuries, of titanium and zircon and rare earths. And so we were able to work a deal where we acquired a company called Base Resources, which owned that project. And Base was in a bit of a pickle at that time because they had a mineral sand project operating in Kenya, a great project, great workforce, great management, all that stuff. But that project was running out. It was depleting. Their plan was to jump from the Kenya project to the Madagascar project. But then I think it was about 2017, 18, 19, the Madagascar government put a suspension on the Toliara project. And so they had nowhere to go. And so their project in Kenya was running out. They didn't have anywhere to jump to. And so again, they were kind of in a pickle. And so it provided us with an opportunity to grab a truly world-class company-making asset in Madagascar. Now, we also have a project in Australia. We also have another project in Brazil that you mentioned. Now, all three of those projects, which we hope to get up and running here in the next couple of years, will supply titanium and zircon to global markets, but then we'll package up that monazite feedstock, bring it to the mill for production of rare earth oxides. And the beauty of that is that our mining cost is mainly the cost to kind of physically separate the monazite using gravity at the mine site at the very front end of the process, package it up, put it in a shipping container, and bring it to Utah. That's our mining cost, which provides us with a major economic advantage over pure play rare earth producers.
That's neat. That's neat. And so the zircon and titanium you can sell separately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you produce things. So the titanium minerals are like ilmenite and rutile, leucoxene. Those are the minerals. Now keep in mind, yes, there are strategic uses for titanium and like titanium metal and sponge and things like that. But the vast majority of titanium goes into kind of mundane industrial materials like, paint and pigment and things like that, makes your paper white, kind of mundane, right? Most zircon, yes, zirconium is used in like nuclear applications and of course there's military and defense and all that, but most zircon kind of goes into mundane ceramics, like the tile in your kitchen, things like that. So again, but those are nice, high margin, good cash flowing industries just in and of themselves. And Toliara is going to be just a wonderful, low cost, very high quality producer of those titanium and zircon minerals. But then you got this monazite, which is really valuable for the rare earths. Just again, put it on a ship, bring it to the U.S. and process it here in the U.S. for our own needs.
Nice. Well, look, before I let you go, we gotta mention a couple other aspects of what Energy Fuels does that aren't as widely known. You do have some vanadium production. It's not as high profile these days because a lot of the prices for a lot of the base metals and base metal alloys have been weak, but you do have that.
Yep. Yeah. So we've produced vanadium oxide, vanadium pentoxide for a long time. It comes off as a byproduct of our primary uranium production.
Yeah.
And like our La Salle mine that we have going in Utah, that's actually a uranium vanadium mine. But honestly, in today's market, we're just throwing away the vanadium and tailings.
Yeah.
Now we can get it back, and which we can absolutely do. But there's no reason for us to spend the money to package it up and sell it into the market. Now, that being said, vanadium is a critical mineral. There are military and defense needs for vanadium. It's used in steel alloys. It's used in like titanium, vanadium alloys for airframes and things like that. And again, everybody knows who we are and where to get it. We've got some good inventories, and so we'll see where that all goes. Yeah, I mean, if the U.S. Government or military needs vanadium, we're there for them.
Neat. And so, and last but certainly not least, because this is a really sexy story if it comes off, you're going to go from a uranium company to a uranium and rare earths company, and maybe to a quote biotech oriented thing or science company if you can manage to extract the stuff to make medical, what's the right term? Medical isotopes?
Medical isotopes, yeah. So again, people might think, oh my God, uranium, rare earths, medical isotopes. What the hell are you guys, right? What the heck are you guys? But it all boils down to the fact that we can process feedstocks that are naturally radioactive that have uranium in them. That's the common thread here, right? And so through our uranium processing and our monazite rare earth processing, we also solubilize radium in those process streams. Okay, radium is another naturally radioactive element. We typically just throw it away in our tailings because there's not really a need for it. But there are some emerging medical technologies, primarily called targeted alpha therapy, which is showing enormous promise in literally curing cancers in a way. So look up targeted alpha therapy. And so one of the precursors that they need for these targeted alpha therapy drugs is radium that we have in our process streams, and it's already solubilized. And so we're looking at ways to recover that radium that we've already got in our process streams and sell it. It's a big, big value. It could be as big or bigger than our uranium and rare earth production, honestly, just because it's so valuable. Now, the trick is that, let's say Pinyon Plain, okay, it's a very high grade uranium deposit. Let's say it has 8 million pounds of uranium in there. It probably has maybe 5 or 10 kilograms of radium throughout that deposit. And so to get that 8 million pounds of uranium, you're going to have to mine hundreds of thousands of tons of ore. Well, how do you recover a few kilograms of radium out of that and purify it, right? That's the trick. And so we're doing R&D on that. And if we can do it in a good economic way, heck, I mean, there is, look, radium is going for millions of dollars per gram. So now, long term, will it stay there? I don't know. But again, we'd be remiss to not look into that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. That's really a cool story. So the radium itself is a separate compound.
Yes. Yeah. It's just another radioactive element. It's actually a daughter product of uranium and thorium decay. As radioactive elements, uranium, it decays into a whole stream of other elements, right? Ultimately, it winds up as lead, right? Thorium has its own stream. And so there's, I believe it's radium 226 and radium 228. One is a byproduct of uranium decay, and one is a byproduct of thorium decay. And keeping in mind that monazite, our rare earth feed, is mostly it's got a lot of thorium in it, and so it decays into one radium isotope, and uranium decays into another radium isotope. Now, what the drugs really need are some really obscure elements like lead 212 or like actinium 225. Those are daughter products of radium. Okay.
Oh wow.
Now we're not looking to recover those. Somebody else does that somewhere else. But they need our radium as sort of their precursor.
Well, that'll be interesting to see if you pull that off, because it was something that's such immense value to science. That's remarkable.
It's amazing. I hope we do too. It's super exciting if we can pull it off. We're not there yet, but we're making progress.
Wow. Lastly, anything else we should be looking for over the balance of the year, news flow wise, Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be coming out with some new feasibility studies on our Toliara project in Madagascar. Also, a feasibility study on the expansion of White Mesa to again, install parallel processing for uranium and rare earths and expand our rare earth processing capacity. Maybe some news on the rare earth metal making and alloying front. Again, we're trying to get a little more vertically integrated and downstream. There might be some opportunities there. Who knows? We'll see what the U.S. government does. I mean, we're there ready to help if they want our help.
Well, and even absent anything that may or may not come from the federal government to help grease the wheels, you guys are in really good financial shape right now too, and able to self-fund.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna have ongoing uranium sales. Maybe some new long-term contracts if prices improve. We'll have some selective spot sales. I mean, again, we're rapidly, just trying to. We're at the point now where we can start really generating cash flow. Now that Pinyon Plain is doing so darn well.
Right.
Now, once we get the rare earth stuff going and our mineral sand projects going, and that's potentially hundreds of millions of dollars of free cash flow if we pull all that off. But again, that's a few years down the road. But in the meantime, we'll stick to our knitting and mine uranium profitably. So
good stuff. Well, folks, like I said before Curtis came on, this is a story that is a little bit tougher for the average person to get their head around because there are these different moving parts. But I think you can understand now that the value here is very compelling. I mean, in my view, based on what the company has just in the uranium space, it's undervalued. Forget about the rare earths. So it's a really, really good time to be loading up anew here if you didn't get in for Act 1 of uranium and nuclear energy's bull market. Act 2 is starting to leave the station, and so don't wait. Make sure you get involved. So here again on the screen is Energy Fuels website. Again, 4U's UUUU on a New York Stock Exchange Amex, and in Toronto it's EFR is the symbol. And last but not least, don't forget as well that yours truly will have a lot more uranium-centric stuff out and some other follow-on information on Energy Fuels. If you're not on my mailing list already, make sure you get on it and follow me here as you see on the screen likewise. So, Curtis, thanks for the update and refreshed lap around the company. And I look forward to seeing you about 5-6 weeks from whatever it is from now out in Wyoming.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
Take care.
For much more of the National Investor's cutting-edge content and actionable investment opportunities, make sure to subscribe to Chris's free content at nationalinvestor.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel too. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.